My name's Lauren Hayes, and today was supposed to be perfect. My son, Eli, just turned 5, the age where every balloon is a miracle and every slice of cake is a kingdom. The morning sun slipped through our kitchen window, glinting off the gold. "Happy birthday" banner I'd hung at midnight. I could still smell the vanilla frosting I'd whipped from scratch and the coffee that had gone cold while I tied ribbons around goodie bags. Then my phone buzzed. A single vibration. Nothing special, except the name on the screen froze me mid-breath. "Dad." I opened the message. "We're skipping our kid's birthday. Money's tight right now." For a second, I just stared. The words looked harmless, but they landed like a stone in my chest. I reread them twice, then again, like maybe I'd misread "money tight" as something else. But no, that was it. No, sorry, no, love you. Just excuses wrapped in 2 short sentences. I typed back, "It's okay, Dad. I understand." But it wasn't okay. It wasn't the first birthday they'd missed, but this time, it hurt more. Maybe because Eli had asked, wide-eyed, if Grandpa was bringing his funny hat again. I'd smiled and said, maybe. I'd lied. As I stood there, staring at the half-melted candles on the counter, my chest tightened, not with anger, but with that old, familiar ache of pretending it didn't matter. I told myself they were struggling. I wanted to believe that. But the next day, I found out the truth. I wasn't always this composed, holding my breath through disappointment like it's second nature. There was a time when I still believed my dad's approval meant safety. I was 17 when everything broke. He just found out I was pregnant, standing in our living room with his jaw locked and his eyes colder than the January air outside. Mom sat on the couch, her hands twisted in her lap, silent. "You've embarrassed this family," Dad said. "You want to play grown-up? Then go do it somewhere else." His voice didn't crack once. Mine did, over and over. I tried to explain, to promise I'd still finish school, that I had plans, that I wasn't ruined. But his expression said he'd already buried me somewhere in his mind. I remember standing there, shaking so hard I could barely hold the small duffel bag I'd packed, a few clothes, my ultrasound photo, and my grandma's silver bracelet. Grandma June had passed just months before, but I could still hear her voice. "Don't let shame decide your future, sweetheart. People will talk, let them. Just keep walking." That bracelet, tiny heart charm, a little tarnished, felt like the only part of her still holding my hand. When I stepped outside, the night air hit my face like ice. My mom followed me to the porch but didn't say anything. Her eyes were glassy, but she didn't reach for me. The porch light flickered. Then the door clicked shut. That sound, it's something I still hear sometimes when the house gets too quiet. I walked to the bus station with tears freezing against my cheeks, one hand on my belly, the other gripping Grandma's bracelet. No plan. No home. Just the stubborn pulse of something bigger than fear. I wasn't brave, not really. I was just too heartbroken to stop moving. I remember whispering to my unborn baby, "It's you and me now, kid. Just you and me." And somehow, saying it out loud made it real. That was the night Lauren Hayes stopped being the girl who needed her father's love and started becoming the woman who would one day teach her son how to live without begging for it. The first few months alone were a blur, a cycle of fear, morning sickness, and nights that felt endless. I rented a tiny room above a laundromat in Dayton, Ohio, the kind of place where the walls were thin, the air smelled like detergent, and hope felt like a luxury item. Eli was born on a Tuesday morning. I remember the fluorescent lights in the hospital, the nurse's tired smile, and the sound of my baby's first cry, small but strong. It was the sound of us surviving. After that, life became about motion. Diapers, formula, dishes. Then work. Always work. I took whatever jobs I could, cleaning offices, waitressing, even folding flyers at a print shop after hours. My feet ached constantly. My hands cracked from cheap soap. But every time I thought about quitting, I'd look at Eli sleeping beside me and whisper, "Not yet, baby. Mama's got you." When he was 2, I got my break, almost by accident. I was working at a diner downtown when a customer, Rachel Myers, asked who designed the chalkboard menu. I told her I had. I used to doodle during slow hours to make the place look less depressing. Rachel smiled, the kind of smile that sees something in you before you see it yourself. She owned a small event company and offered me a part-time gig designing signs and table decor. It paid barely more than the diner, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in years: direction. Rachel became my mentor, patient, kind, but never soft. She taught me how to price my work, how to handle clients, and how to stand tall when people talked down to me. I started taking night classes in design and marketing. There were nights I studied while Eli slept on my lap, his little hand gripping my sleeve. Sometimes I'd cry from exhaustion, but I'd keep typing because that bracelet on my wrist reminded me. Keep walking. By 25, I'd launched my own small business, Little Ember Events, named after the warmth I never wanted to lose, even in struggle. At first, I posted modest photos online: cupcakes, centerpieces, balloons, nothing fancy. But word spread fast. People loved my work because it felt personal. Then came my first corporate client, a local tech firm. The paycheck was more than I used to make in 3 months. I remember staring at the direct deposit notification, laughing and crying at the same time. That night, I made mac and cheese with Eli and let him pour extra cheese, just because we could afford it. I didn't tell my parents. Not when I got my first car. Not when I rented a real apartment. Not even when I opened my studio. They still thought I was scraping by. And maybe I liked it that way, because some victories are better kept quiet until the right moment to show just how far you've come. The morning after my dad's money-tight text, I took Eli to the park to distract us both. The air was crisp, the kind that makes you want to believe in good days again. He ran ahead, chasing pigeons, his laughter echoing through the trees. I smiled until I saw them, my parents, across the street, sitting at an outdoor cafe, coffee, pastries, shopping bags, smiles. The kind of smiles you wear when life's good. The kind that doesn't fit a story about money being tight. For a second, I froze. The shock hit before the anger did. I told myself maybe they'd borrowed money, maybe someone treated them, anything to avoid believing what it looked like. But deep down, I knew they hadn't skipped my son's birthday because of money. They'd skipped it because of me. Later that week, I got a text from Mom. "We're in town. Thought we'd drop by and see you and Eli." I stared at my phone, half smiling. The universe had a sense of humor after all. "Sure," I typed. "Come by tomorrow. Around 3. The next day, I cleaned my living room like I was preparing a stage. Not to impress them, but to remind myself of how far I'd come. The sunlight poured through the tall windows of my home, a 2-story townhouse with white oak floors, art I'd bought from local artists, and a framed certificate from a business award hanging near the dining room. My event studio took up the lower floor, glass shelves lined with floral arrangements, candles, and framed photos from weddings I designed. When they arrived, I met them at the door. Mom smiled too wide. Dad looked uncomfortable, eyes darting around like he wasn't sure where to land them. "Wow," Mom said softly. "You've really made this place nice." "Thanks," I replied, calm. "It's mine. Bought it last year." The silence after that sentence was delicious, the kind that lets the truth settle. Dad cleared his throat. "So, you're doing okay then?" I smiled. "Better than okay." I gestured toward the wall. "That's my company, Little Ember Events. We just finished a 6-figure project last month." Mom blinked. "You own it." "I built it." I corrected, my voice steady. "From scratch. After you kicked me out." They exchanged a look, shame mixed with disbelief. Dad tried to speak. "We thought you'd need help." I nodded. "I did. But not the kind you were willing to give." I walked to the counter and poured 3 glasses of water. My hands didn't shake this time. "You know," I said, "when you texted that money was tight, I believed you. I even felt sorry for you. But the next day, I saw you two having brunch downtown." Mom's face went pale. Dad looked away. "It wasn't like that," he murmured. "We just didn't want to come." I finished for him. "Because pretending I don't exist is easier than facing what you did." The air was heavy, but I didn't fill the silence. I let it stretch, let the truth sting. Then, quietly, I added, "My son doesn't need grandparents who show up for birthdays only when it looks good on Facebook." Mom's lip trembled. "Lauren, please." "No," I said gently, not cruelly. "I'm not angry. I just finally stopped begging for crumbs and started building my own table." Dad looked at the photos of Eli on the wall. His eyes softened for the first time in years. And in that moment, I saw something crack in him. Not pride, not regret, maybe realization. That the daughter he once threw out had learned to rise without him. And that, somehow, made me both sad and free all at once. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air between us felt thick, a mix of guilt, silence, and years of unspoken things. I watched my father glance around the room again. The soft white curtains, the polished floor, the wall of client photos, the small play area in the corner with Eli's toy cars lined up in a perfect row. It was like he was realizing, maybe for the first time, that I had built an entire world without him. He cleared his throat. "Lauren, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things were complicated back then." I nodded slowly. They were. But they were complicated for me too, and I was 17. He looked down. "I know." Mom's voice was softer. We didn't know how to help." I sighed, my tone calm but certain. "Then learn now." They both looked up. "You want to be in Eli's life?" I asked. "That's not a gift you get for showing up when it's convenient. It's something you earn." Dad started to speak, but I lifted a hand gently to stop him. "Here's what that means," I continued. "You don't lie. You don't make excuses. And if you promise him you'll be somewhere, you show up. Every time." Mom blinked, tears forming. "We can do that." "I hope so," I said. "Because he deserves grandparents who teach him love isn't something that disappears when things get hard." I looked at my dad, really looked. The same man who told me I was a mistake, standing now in a home built from the ashes of his rejection. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. "I'm not asking you to apologize for the past," I said softly. "I'm asking you to grow in the present." Mom nodded, wiping her eyes. "We will, honey." Dad swallowed hard. "I'm proud of you, Lauren. I just didn't think that I'd make it." I finished, smiling faintly. "Neither did I sometimes. But I did. Because you taught me what I didn't want to become." He winced, not from anger, but realization. I stepped closer, placed the bracelet on my wrist, Grandma June's, and said, "If you want to honor her memory, start by treating me the way she would have wanted you to." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was clearing, like a storm finally passing. Dad nodded slowly. "All right. We'll try." For his sake, I added, glancing at Eli's photo. "And maybe ours too." They both turned toward the door after a while, quiet but different. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small around them. I didn't need their approval or their apology. All I needed was this peace, earned, not given. Weeks passed, and life returned to its rhythm: school runs, client meetings, bedtime stories. But something subtle had shifted. One Saturday morning, as I was prepping for an event, a knock came at the door. When I opened it, Eli's eyes lit up. "Grandpa." My dad stood there, awkward but trying. In his hands, a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. "I brought something," he said. Inside was a handmade wooden toy truck. Rough around the edges, but carved with care. Eli grinned like he'd been handed treasure. That small gesture, that effort, meant more than a dozen missed birthdays. It wasn't about the toy. It was about showing up. Mom started coming around too. Sometimes she'd bring groceries, sometimes just her time. We'd sit on the porch while Eli played, talking about small things, weather, work, nothing deep yet. But I could feel her trying. And that was enough for now. Late one night, after tucking Eli into bed, I sat in my studio, surrounded by soft lamplight. My eyes landed on a framed photo of Grandma June, smiling, wise, eternal. I unclasped her bracelet and turned it over in my palm. The tiny heart charm caught the light, and I whispered, "You were right, Grandma. Shame didn't decide my future. I did." For years, I had carried that old pain like it was armor, thinking it made me strong. But real strength wasn't just surviving the hurt. It was learning how to live without letting it define me. The next morning, Eli ran into my room holding the wooden truck, yelling, "Mommy, Grandpa's here again." And I smiled. Because forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, it's a quiet choice you make, again and again, every time love shows up where hurt used to live. I looked out the window, sunlight spilling across the walls of a life I'd built from nothing but grit and grace. The same walls that once echoed with loneliness now hummed with laughter. And for the first time in a long, long while, I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up anymore. They either did or they didn't. But I had already arrived. Turns out, I whispered as the camera in my mind faded out, money was never tight. Love was. But I stopped waiting for theirs when I learned to build my own.